Good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Burns. I wanted to give you a video description, or I guess it's mostly audio, but an audio description of what it is that you need to be doing in Animal Kingdom today. You have three things. First, you need to finish your notes on Cnidaria. Second, you need to finish your notes or your flashcards and practice with them. And then third, there is a practice quiz that you can take, you can get from the sub. And that quiz will give you an opportunity to see a little bit what the assessment is going to look like tomorrow. So let's start with the first step, your notes on Cnidaria. This is in your notes folder. We took most of these notes on Tuesday. We talked about the defining traits and examples of Cnidaria. Talked a little bit about cnidocytes or nematocysts and how those stinging cells work, those specialized stinging cells that define that group. We talked a little bit about their body plan, how they have two layers of cells, and those layers became tissues that allow them to be specialized and carry out specialized functions like movement and sensing the environment. We talked about how they feed and how they remove waste. Again, if any of this is stuff you don't have, you can always pause this video or go back and look at these slides. These are the slides we showed in class, and you can just copy the information. We started talking about moving materials through the body, that food, oxygen, waste are the primary materials that have to get moved through the body. And we talked about how that food and oxygen is passed from cell to cell as a way of moving that food and oxygen, particularly out of areas called the gastric pouches, which are part of the gastrovascular cavity. That's the opening inside of the cnidarian. Communicating through the body was not something we talked about, so you may want to pause this slide and get this information down. Cnidaria have nerves and muscles that can communicate with each other. They can sense light and dark, they can move towards it, they can feel touch and move towards or away from that touch. So they do have an ability to communicate from one area of the body to the other, but they don't have any central control. They don't really have a brain. As far as reproduction, they can reproduce asexually by budding, where there's a parent and then an offspring that buds off and breaks off of the parent. And they can also use sperm and egg that they can release into the water. And Cnidaria, like sponges, are hermaphrodites, meaning they produce both sperm and egg in the same individual. So those are your notes on Cnidaria. Once you have finished those up, you should go to your flashcards and make sure those are complete. If you need extra copies of them, underneath the flag on the ledge there are some extra copies of those flashcards. And you should get those finished and cut out. Then once you've got those finished and cut out, I'd like you to review them in a really particular way. So there's kind of like this brain hack for how to use flashcards well. Most people just kind of end up flipping through them, and they're sort of moderately effective. But there's a better way. The better way is this. You take your stack, maybe divide it in half if you've got a bunch of them. So maybe you got like 10, 15 cards in a stack. And you go through each one, and you just, without looking at your notes, without trying, just see if you can get them right. Any that you can get right, you put in the correct pile. Any you don't get right, you put in the incorrect pile. Now, the correct pile you leave alone. You already know those. You don't really need to waste any of your study time looking at those. So now you take your incorrect pile, 3, 5, 8 cards. If there's a lot of them, again, you could divide these up into 2 smaller groups so that you've got about 5 or 6 cards per group. And here's where the brain hack comes in. So your brain likes to memorize things using patterns. It looks for patterns in its environment. So if you go through each card in order and you keep that order the same and you just keep flipping through it, pretty soon you'll learn the information on the card and you'll learn the pattern. The trick then is to kind of mess with your brain by, once you've got the pattern, you can get them all right in sequence, mix them together again and try again. And if you can still get them right, then your brain not only has learned the information, but it has lost its need to have the pattern too. Once you can do that, with those cards, put them back in the I know it pile and go through one more time to make sure you do in fact know them all, and then keep repeating that pattern. If you do that once or twice between now and the assessment, or maybe a couple times between now and the assessment, you will know all of the key information. The last thing is there's a practice quiz just to give you an idea of what the test will look like. When you're finished with going through your flashcards, you can go up and pick that up from the teacher, take it, and then the answer key is in the course in Schoology. So once you've taken that, go and try the answer key. You can skip question, just so you know, you can skip question number, let's see, skip question number 8 and number 10 on that review. So, all right, give it a go. I will see you on Friday.